On July 12, 2022, 3 TikTok creators drove to Death Valley's Badwater Basin to film on a day forecast past 120 degrees. They had a guide and a hard turnaround before peak heat. When the guide called time, 2 refused to leave. The third begged them to turn back. By 4 p.m., all 3 were dead on the salt, and what pushed them past that warning started long before. Yenia Koraransa, age 24, Elise Broussard, 23, and Marin Dalness, 25, were reported to have left Los Angeles early on July 12, 2022, bound for Death Valley's Badwater Basin. Their destination sits 282 feet below sea level, a place known as the lowest point in North America, stretching out as a broad white salt pan with no natural shade. The group's drive covered more than 250 miles, crossing the Mojave before dropping into the valley's stark open floor. That morning, forecasts warned of air temperatures above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, but the official record from the Furnace Creek weather station, just a few miles north, logged the day's maximum at 123 degrees. Headlines and social media posts later claimed 131 degrees, but no station measured that figure on July 12th. The National Weather Service issued a heat advisory, not an excessive heat warning, for the region. Details about the outing and the travelers themselves rely on narrative accounts. No primary incident record or official verification of their identities has surfaced. Until such documentation is found, every detail remains a reported claim rather than a confirmed fact. Over nearly 3 years, the reported travel channel carved out a niche by visiting places most people were told to avoid. Each new destination was chosen for its risk, not its comfort. As views and followers climbed, the expectation to go further and take bigger risks became part of the routine. Comments and likes poured in whenever the group filmed in places marked by warning signs or extreme conditions. For Yenia, Elise, and Marin, the challenge wasn't just about seeing new places. It was about proving they could handle what others wouldn't dare. The channel's audience rewarded each escalation, and over time, dangerous locations shifted from rare stunts to a core promise of the channel. The drive to outdo previous trips and meet rising audience expectations became its own incentive, shaping the creators' choices long before the day in Death Valley. Francis Ackland was described as a veteran of the desert, with nearly 2 decades guiding photographers and travelers through Death Valley's harshest corners. The narrative credits him with holding a National Park Service commercial use authorization, a credential meant to ensure guides meet strict safety and training standards. His approach to the July 12th outing was shaped by experience. Start before dawn, when the salt flats are at their coolest, and set a hard turnaround time that brings everyone back well before the heat peaks. Ackland's plan called for the group to head out in the early morning, limiting exposure and keeping to a schedule that prioritized safety over any shot or video. The rule was clear: no one would remain on the salt pan past the set cutoff, regardless of how tempting the footage or how close they were to a perfect frame. With the boundary in place, the expectation was that everyone would return before the valley's heat became unforgiving. The early shoot unfolded just as planned. Before dawn, the group moved across the salt flats, working quickly in the cool darkness. Every shot came easily while the world was still gray and the air felt almost gentle. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Francis Ackland checked his watch and called for the group to turn back. Temperatures were already climbing, and the park's guidelines were clear: no one should remain on the flats past the safe window. The National Park Service warns visitors to avoid hiking after 10 a.m., to carry at least a gallon of water per person, and to never underestimate the valley's heat. On this morning, the official forecast called for highs above 120 degrees, and even at sunrise, the salt pan began to radiate heat back into the sky. But Yenia and Elise stood their ground. Yenia insisted that her centerpiece image was still missing: a wide, empty frame with the 3 creators alone, dwarfed by endless white salt. It was the kind of shot that defined their channel, a visual promise that they'd gone farther than anyone else. Early success had made the environment seem manageable, but with each passing minute, the risk grew. Elise backed Yenia, Convinced that the perfect photo was still within reach, the focus shifted from safety to capturing that one last image, even as Francis repeated the need to leave. The cool hour confidence faded as the sun rose higher, but the push for a signature shot outweighed every warning. The decision to stay wasn't about ignoring advice. It was about chasing a vision that now seemed just out of frame. Maren Dahl-Ness had grown up in Duluth, Minnesota, where long trails and unpredictable weather shaped her as the group's only true hiker. She read the warning signs in Death Valley's rising heat and sided with Francis Ackland, urging her friends to turn back before the sun made the salt pan dangerous. Maren's experience told her that even a short delay could mean trouble, but the channel's dynamic had its own momentum. Yania and Elise, focused on capturing a shot that would outdo their last, outvoted her 2-1. Maren, unwilling to leave her friends, stayed with them as they pressed farther out onto the blinding white flats. Francis Ackland refused to lead them any deeper. He ended the tour at the agreed turnaround, making it clear he would not be responsible for a push beyond the safe window. As he walked back toward the vehicles, the air was already thick with heat, the ground radiating energy back into the sky. When the group failed to return, Francis filed an overdue report, following protocol as temperatures soared past the park's recommended cutoff for outdoor activity. That alert triggered a chain reaction. Park rangers and law enforcement began preparing for a search, and Inyo County Search and Rescue was placed on standby. The morning's tension now shifted from creative ambition to a question of survival, with the group's route unresolved and the day only growing hotter. National Park Service guidance for Death Valley in summer is direct. Avoid hiking at low elevations after 10 o'clock in the morning, carry at least 1 gallon of water per person per day, and on days of extreme heat, spend no more than about 15 minutes outside an air-conditioned vehicle at Badwater Basin. These are not challenges to test, but limits set for survival. The group's reported device data, reconstructed from phone timestamps and location pings, places them more than 2 miles out on the salt flats, far beyond the reach of any shade or water source, with no realistic path back once the heat peaks. The digital trail shows a steady progression away from the vehicles, each step into rising temperatures making return less likely. Footage captured on their phones grows shorter and less focused, the images increasingly shaky and flat before stopping altogether. Experts warn that direct sun, the blinding reflection off the salt, physical exertion, and dehydration can rapidly break down judgment and physical ability. No official forensic extraction or digital evidence report has been released to verify these details, leaving the reconstruction based on narrative accounts and reported data alone. By late afternoon, the reported account places rangers on the salt flats at Badwater Basin, where all 3 creators were found dead, separated from one another with empty water bottles nearby. The narrative claims the discovery happened around 4 p.m., with each body exposed on the open flats, far from any shade or relief. According to the same account, the Inyo County medical examiner later ruled the deaths accidental, listing environmental hyperthermia as the cause. In simple terms, environmental hyperthermia means the body can no longer manage its own core temperature when exposed to overwhelming heat. Sweat evaporates too quickly, the cooling system fails, and organs begin to shut down. The investigation, as described in the report, found no negligence by Francis Ackland, highlighting his advanced planning, repeated warnings, refusal to continue farther, and prompt overdue report. Still, it's important to recognize that this entire sequence, including the discovery, medical findings, and the investigation's conclusion, originates from a single YouTube narrative that was later flagged as AI-generated. No official coroner report or law enforcement record confirms these details. What remains beyond dispute is the real danger of Death Valley's heat. The park's own guidance is direct. This is a hazard to avoid, not a challenge to beat. Today, heat advisories for Death Valley are more urgent than ever. Record temperatures keep rising, and social media still rewards risky extremes. The desert doesn't negotiate with ambition or algorithms. In places where nature sets the rules, survival means knowing when the camera should stay off.